Alright, hello and welcome to Titania's review, but also her builds video. So, there's a lot to talk about with Titania, so let's just get started on her abilities right away. Her abilities are a tad unique, a little bit different than what we're used to, not very straightforward in some cases. And the first one we got here is Spellbind. So Spellbind, at face value, is just a float for enemies, but that is a long 25-second stun in my case on like 1 or 2 enemies given the ability radius that I've got set. With max range, this really isn't a very large ability, but does become sort of useful for that case as well. I certainly wouldn't do that, but it is possible that you could build her for a max range build and have some success, I would say. Personally, I don't think that that's super useful, but you could try it out. It's okay. The other thing that Spellbind offers, though, which I'll just show real quick, is proc immunity. So, for radiation sorties and such, those pesky ashes, the best way to make it so they can't kill you is just to do this to yourself so you can't kill them, and then use your one on them. So you have to target enemies with this, but you can also target allies with it, and you can target yourself by just aiming down. Very useful, 25 seconds, and you can't be procced. Very useful for those situations where procs are an issue. Otherwise, we come to a big disappointment, honestly. Tribute is kind of a bad ability. Like, it's just not strong in any real respect, and there's only one of its 4 buffs that it can give you that are actually really worth it. So the first buff is Dust, and this is the one that's kind of worth it. This gives you an enemy accuracy debuff, which you also get enemy accuracy debuffs by being in your Razor Wing, and those two things stack. But we'll talk about the problems with that kind of thing later. Basically, within 30 meters around you, you reduce enemy accuracy by 50%, which is pretty good. It's not bad. On allies, that's significantly better. On you, it is moderately useful. The second buff is Thorns. This is totally worthless. This is just damage reflection. It goes up to 25%. It's damage reflection, not reduction. So that can just fuck right off. Also, I should mention where you're getting these buffs from. Dust comes from basic ranged enemies like Lancers, like regular Corpus Crewmen. Thorns comes from melee enemies like Chargers, Butchers. I think that Oxium Osprey give you Thorns in the Corpus faction. Not sure on that one, actually. And then we have Entangle. So Entangle seems like it could be useful, but its range is so short that it makes it useless. Basically, this is just an enemy slow. And an enemy slow is pretty good. It goes up to 25% slow, which you're like, yeah, alright. 25% slow, I'll take it. Why not? But it's also only within 10 meters around you. So it's completely worthless. Because if you spend a lot of time within 10 meters of an enemy as Titania, newsflash, you're dead. It is just not strong. It's not really worth it. Like, getting to the max of that buff, like, getting to the max of any of these buffs really just costs too much energy. You need 5 casts on those, like, low-level ranged enemies to get Dust to, like, the 50% maximum. It's just not worth it. And the final one is the least worth it, and that's Full Moon. So Full Moon at face value, it's like, oh, that's 75% increased damage for companions. 75% increased damage is crazy. Problem: companions in this context does not mean teammates. So your like friendly neighborhood Excalibur is getting nothing from this. Absolutely nothing from this. And you yourself are not getting anything from this from your allies having it. But you know who is? Carrier, or your Kavat, or your Kubro, or Worm. That's what companion means in this context. Literally, your Sentinels, your Kubros, and your Kavats. So, not only do you have to build this up to the 75%, which granted is not, like, crazy, but you also have to be within the radius, like, near them, the animals and shit, and you have to hope that they're attacking enemies, which you can't control, in order for this to potentially maybe someday be useful. So it's completely invalid, like, use case. Like, there's no reason to have it. This ability is single target, and it is incredibly weak because it is single target. If Tribute was an AoE of enemies that you were pulling the buffs out of, this would be significantly better, because a bunch of minor buffs that you get all at once is something to be like, okay, well, those are relatively minor, but you get 4 pretty decent buffs. So that's cool and worth casting in the right scenario. However, this is single target, and at max efficiency, you can see it costs 13 fucking energy, which is way too damn much. So there's no real reason to cast this outside of, like, if you have the chance to grab some dust buffs. So that's that. I was very worried about this ability, and it turns out that I guess my worries were warranted, because it is not good. It is interesting, though. I will definitely say that. It is her most interesting ability. Moving on, we have an ability that's actually pretty useful. Lantern. Lantern is a little clunky. I definitely will say it's a little bit clunky. I'd really much prefer it if this ability, like, locked the enemy in place and made them the lantern, and then you could spellbind them to give them the float. But with this, they're always floating after you cast it on them, which means they can get pushed away, and the control becomes a little especially with teammates using, like, high-powered weapons to just, like, blast them away. That stuff's unfortunate. But this gives you, even at my range, which is a little under 100% even, this gives you a nice area. You can see 22 meters. That's not terribly small or anything, around the lanterned enemy, where enemies will just walk at them and not shoot at you or your friends, which is pretty good. Also, 40-second duration, pretty solid. The enemy becomes invincible during that, so it can't end early unless you end it early by hitting 3 again. This becomes a nice little hallway lockdown for you. It's pretty solid. A super max range variant of this build could do a lot with Lantern, I think. I think there's probably a place for that somewhere. I'm not sure where, though. As we already have a lot of large area CC that I'm not sure what this could replace, but this might be a substitute that's possible in some of those situations. But lastly, we have Razor Wing. So Razor Wing is pretty good. Like, I couldn't test it properly until not terribly long ago, whenever it was actually given the ability to do the thing that the guns do, which is proc status. The guns, as you can see here, well, the gun and the sword, rather, that you can see here, these weapons are status. Both of them are status weapons, which is kind of shitty that they're both status weapons, as the sword is basically completely useless. You can use it to heal with Life Strike, so I guess there's that. It's not useful, unfortunately. However, the Dex Pixia are quite nice, because they are machine guns with a very high status chance that also have very high damage if you build her for some strength. So she becomes pretty strong in terms of just, like, blasting through enemy armor and killing them pretty quickly, honestly. It helps a lot that the Dex Pixia are slash based, because those slash procs help you just, like, high armored enemies, just corrosive blast, like, lots of slash procs, burn through them, knock them down, and just kill them as quickly as possible. It's pretty good for that. I have some other problems with Razor Wing that we'll talk about, but the face value of the guns is that they're quite good. The sword is just kind of meh. But let's move on to the build. So initially I wanted to go for, like, good range, reasonable, like, low duration, and, like, some strength. But with her initial polarity setup, it's just not really feasible to do so, because you have this D polarity here. Minus this D polarity, there's some interesting things I think you could do where she has a little bit more range, a little bit less duration, but there's not a great balance that you can set there while also keeping, like, good efficiency. And good efficiency is something you need, because the drain on her 4 is a little intense. So this is what I ended up with. Obviously, with some Forma, you'd want to replace Flow with Prime Flow to stay in your 4 even longer, and then do a couple other things here. But this build has worked out so far. Obviously, I'm only using Steel Charge up here because it's giving me so many points. I think that what I would replace this with would probably be that new aura mod that gives strength once I get it. I think that would be my ideal replacement on her. Pretty sure. But let's get to the weapons. So, because it is a status, the Dex Pixia are status weapons, I'm using the Quanta Vandal, because the Quanta Vandal is a weapon that responds very well to this build. So this is Shred Speed Trigger, which is all of the speed I'm going to need for the Dex Pixia, and also these status mods, and also the regular damage stuff that we need on this weapon. So I find that this has worked out pretty well. Having the punch through is actually really helpful in the Dex Pixia, and this is overall pretty solid. I think you could get away with only having Shred, because the fire rate of the Dex Pixia is just a little too slow, and you could fix it up with that, but I like having the much faster fire rate, even if I think it makes the screen shake a little bit unbearable. Whenever you do it that way, your damage output goes up enough that I think it's worth it. Also, worth noting, with the Dex Pixia, Combustion Beam doesn't work. No mods that are like that work. Don't try it. They don't work. And then for the melee weapon, just kind of ingest a little bit, I have this equipped. This technically works in the melee weapon's favor, but we won't be using the melee weapon because it's kind of just bad, unfortunately. But before we get started, let's talk about the gripes I have with Razorwing. And we haven't talked about Titania's passive yet, which is her better bullet jumps for you and your teammates that are bullet jumping with you. So this is her like base bullet jump. This area is the place where teammates can be, and they will bullet jump faster as well. She is very fast at base. Her with a parkour mod is kind of nutso, because she can be so fast. And even right here, like she's very quick. Her bullet jumping ability is amazing, absolutely stellar. And it is this main reason why it does not make any sense that her 4 is slow, which is very unfortunate. So you can see how fast I'm moving here. Like, I'm going from place to place very quickly. It's very snappy and quick. Unfortunately, when you're in her 4, she's slow. You just kind of plod along. There's no quickness. You don't have an afterburner. Nothing like that. It's very unfortunate that it is like this. Beyond that, like from like sitting and shooting, it's a little bit slow to get going. So getting away from things is a little bit difficult. And even with your like 50% like evasion on this, it's just not really that strong. Also, while you're in your 4, as you can probably tell, my carrier disappears, which means that he's not picking anything up while I'm like this. So instead of being able to like fly above the battlefield and like shoot down on enemies and fuck them all up, you kind of are relegated to just flying along the ground because you need the energy to stay in this form. And like this is okay, and it kind of looks cool, honestly, but like it's a little restrictive. I really wish that my Sentinel's abilities would work in this. Specifically, Helios would be very nice for like just flying over, like say, infested enemies and getting Helios to scan them all. But it's just unfortunate. Like she makes like one entire slot, well, two in some cases of your gear just like completely disappear whenever she's doing the thing that she's kind of supposed to do, which is really unfortunate. Yeah, it's just not great. I do like her. Her abilities are like reasonable, but a lot of them are just too clunky for a lot of use cases. But let's just get started with the test. She can pass this test, is worth noting, but she has consistency problems. And the reason she has consistency problems is because her survival is based on evasion. And survival based on evasion properties, basically in Warframe, means that you have kind of a % chance to die in a lot of cases, where you're lowering their accuracy by 50%. And then in some cases another 50% beyond that, but enemies will still do enough damage and they have the potential to hit you. They can potentially hit you, and bombards can't miss, also worth noting. So you're always worried about bombards, and if a heavy gunner shoots like a couple shots at you, you'll die in like at this level about 3 or 4 shots. Those 3 or 4 shots, they're shooting a lot of them, and even if most of them miss, you can still die very quickly if you get unlucky, which is the shitty thing about evasion in this game. So it's a bit ineffective. And I'm going to be taking down the Bombards first, and then we're going to be showing something about Bombards that is truly fucked up. Alright. Having blast on these weapons is outstanding. Okay, I floated these two, because they're Bombards, and fuck them. Okay, whoop. There's that accuracy thing again. Your 3 doesn't have very much range. Alright, there we go. This one's within my lantern, and any enemies walking up behind me are going to be within the lantern. So they just have to walk at it. I can also finish off this corrupted gunner. Obviously, you can see this is really clunky because I'm just trying to shoot her in the head, but she's just floating away. And I can bring this guy down and finish him off. And there's one left. There we go. Okay, so that went about as well as it could have. I got the Bombards in like one cast, floated them and murdered them. The Ancients were close together, even though one of them % chance hooked me, unfortunately. But now we're going to show some stuff with Bombards. Because this Warframe can show off exactly what is absolutely ridiculous about Bombards, and I want to show that because I have the opportunity to. So, obviously I can be tiny and fly. You can see these rockets. Ow. They hit my butterflies. Those guys are all dead now. You can see these rockets. You can see they're tracking. Nope, shit. Didn't dodge that one as precisely. Let's try that again. You can see these rockets. And they're going to keep following me. Like forever. And like you can see there's a problem here with how long these rockets can follow me for, and the kind of like crazy 180 bullshit they can pull. Like why have Bombards remain like this? Also, worth noting, can't shoot them. You can't shoot these down. Why can't we shoot those down? Who can say? Also, you might have thought that those were flying away in the distance. No, no, no. They totally turned around. And they will turn back towards the ground and continue to follow me. Oh, new ones. Like this is this is Bombard rockets right here. Those are continuing to follow me. Like, this is... Why? Like, well, I don't know why Bombards have, like, been allowed to stay like this for so long. Because, like, these rockets just follow you indefinitely. You can't shoot them. And let's not forget, you can't hide. You can't just be like, I'll go behind a thing. Because you'll die anyway. Like, it doesn't matter if you're behind a thing against Bombards. And, like, this has been this way for, like, a long time. Dead. Like, hiding behind a pillar, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how big the pillar is, either. Like, I got hurt from that. Like, if they hit the wall, there's nothing I can do. I don't know. Just wanted to kind of point that out, because it's a good opportunity, too. That Bombards are kind of fucking ridiculous. But Titania is okay. She's fine. Her Dex Pixia are nice. Her 1 is good. Her 1 is nice, and there's certain scenarios where her 1 status resistance is very, very good. Her 3, I think, is going to be, like, nichely situational in good in some cases, depending on the map. Her 2 is really, really lackluster. And her 4 is just a little slow. Like, there's just some clunky things about Titania that I hope get kind of buffed in and fix her up a little bit, because her main survival ability is dodging, which is just not super effective in the game, so I wish her abilities were a little more effective on the whole. But she's fine. There's no, like, glaring, like, huge design problems with her or anything. Like, she's solid. She's just not, like, there. Like, there's clunky things about her, and her 2 buff-wise is just pretty weak. But yeah, that's Titania. She's okay. I'll see you guys tomorrow.